back to English and back to our final moment of attention and keep the stigma alive. So what I'm going to bring you here is essentially our national experience. Now it's not only our local experience, but also our national experience. The 5 colleagues that share rheumatology with me as the love of their lives in terms of professional activities have met also Rheuma PT, not only our techniques unit, but also Rheuma PT. Okay, I'll tell you about Rheuma PT a little bit. So what I'm going to cover is Rheuma PT and the experience of infliximab biosimilars in rheumatology here in our country. So what is Rheuma PT? So Rheuma PT, I would say, is an example of how we can organize ourselves as physicians, okay? In this case, this is a registry that was organized by the Portuguese Society of Rheumatology 12 years ago, okay? Now it is on use by all the public rheumatologists, so all the public departments belonging to the National Health Service that have rheumatologists, but also almost all private physicians that have rheumatology clinics are using Rheuma PT. Okay, so together we have at our database clinical data coming from over 80 different clinics. Okay, 80. We are also collecting data from other countries. We have centers in Brazil, and we have also centers in UK and other countries. Why? Because they have interest on the structure, and we have everything translated into English. So all the fields that we have inside this database have an English translation. Okay, of course this is written in Portuguese, but has an English translation. This is not a database. This is an electronic clinical record. Okay. I don't know how to say this in Spanish, but this is something like a processo clínico electrónico or prontuário electrónico or something like that. Okay, so we are facing the patient, and while we are taking care of that appointment, everything that we write in this electronic clinical record will be useful for the clinical appointment and the clinical follow-up of the patient, but also everything that we write in these closed fields will be included in the national database. Okay? So at this moment we have more than 18,000 patients and more than 200,000 appointments collected here. So this is trillions of data that is here available. So we have here 2 points of interest. One is for clinicians. This is a very nice way of practicing medicine. So it's a very organized way. For instance, Pedro is one example of someone that started to work in our daily daycare unit just using Rheuma PT. So he doesn't know how to take care of these patients without Rheuma PT. For him, it's natural to use Rheuma PT. Of course, we had to start somewhere, and we started 10 years ago with a major transformation in the mindset of all rheumatologists. That has been a kind of a campaign that we introduced, trying to convince everybody that good rheumatology practice was possible if we would Rheuma PT. This was the first step. Then the second step was to convince everybody that to prescribe biologics without using Rheuma PT is bad practice. And I think that we have convinced almost 100% of the Portuguese rheumatologists that that is bad practice. Why I'm saying this? Because it's very difficult now to ask a Portuguese rheumatologist, are you prescribing biologics? Yes. Do you use Rheuma PT? Of course. So even if he is not a very good user of Rheuma PT, he will for sure say that he uses Rheuma PT. And this is very nice, very interesting, psychological speaking, because there is no intervention of the state. There's no intervention of the National Service, nothing. This is auto-organization, self-organization of the Portuguese rheumatologists. And we even try to convince the Ministry of Health to make this a compulsory register for prescribing biologics. For us, just for us, but we didn't convince them because they think that we should be free and etc., etc., etc. But anyway, this is an example of, in a small country, you can organize a very kind of personal version of a registry. So you can personalize everything and you can adapt everything. And this can be easily done just with an informatic working with us, with an IT person working in this. We started this project 12 years ago with 3 IT persons. Now we have just one that works 100% with us all the time. This is his life job, okay? But it has transformed a lot the way we perceive the prescription of biologics and the way we organize the follow-up of other patients, because it's not only biologics. We follow SLE patients, vasculitis patients, scleroderma patients, etc., etc. Other diseases apart from those that are classic in rheumatology that you've heard here, rheumatoid arthritis, spondyloarthritis, etc. So when I'm trying to explain a little bit more rheumapathy, it's just to emphasize that this can be done in any place of the world. It's just a matter of organization and interaction between people. Okay? So the point here is that since the first day that we had the infliximab biosimilar and then the other biologics, we immediately introduced in rheumapathy the registry of biosimilars. We have even a highlight here in red that you can see that we have already the folder for biosimilars, alerting people that don't forget we have everything prepared. So this is the report of rheumapathy from December 2017, and this is capturing patients being treated with biologics. So you see that in this red line, you see the RA patients, so 2,000 something are the active rheumatoid arthritis patients that are being captured here in the database, spondyloarthritis, psoriatic arthritis. My point is that these 3 curves are related to one of the indications that infliximab has in rheumatology, which is exactly to treat RA, spondyloarthritis, psoriatic arthritis. However, the use of infliximab all over the world, but particularly in Portugal, has suffered a big deviation from this growing initial curve. So our database started, as I told you, about 10 years ago, but there was already a registry on paper. So it was possible to include retrospectively data from 2000. That's the reason why our registry produces data now of 20 years duration, okay? Because we retrospectively included data from 2000. But the point is that infliximab was growing, but then in the field of rheumatology, it stopped to grow around 2004, and then etanercept kept growing, adalimumab kept growing, and the curve was then crossed by golimumab, by tocilizumab, and by rituximab. This is in rheumatology, of course, because in gastroenterology it's completely different. Okay? This is important to understand how we can uptake biosimilars of infliximab in rheumatology practice, because if we just stay waiting for the new cases, there will be very few new cases prescribed in the field of rheumatology, okay? So rheumapathy allows to prescribe by INN, of course, because by law we have to prescribe by INN, but combined with the brand name. And that's the way we can follow up these patients. So we have a field for prescribing the dose, the frequency, etc. So we keep this tracked for all the patients. How things stand by December 2017. So by December 2017, we had about 4,600 patients on active treatment on biologics registered in rheumapathy, of whom only 426 were on infliximab and 219, more than 50%, on CT-P13. So actually at this moment most of the patients that are registered in the database are on the biosimilar. So this is the overall number of exposure to biologics. This is just detailing a little bit what we have. But you can see that the total numbers around the use of infliximab, although the total number is relatively low, most of the patients are on infliximab for many years. So, and from this report, I'm not going to detail the report because the report doesn't say much more than this actually, and the details that I've shown you yesterday are more informative, of course, than what I could show from rheumapathy. But the point here is that infliximab was decided by medical option, and thus many were switches after other anti-TNF in the registry. Okay, many were switches. The use of the biosimilar was discussed with all patients, exactly as I described with our experience here. And the infliximab biosimilars were used on rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, and spondyloarthritis indications. Very rare off-label patients, okay, exactly as our experience was here, excluding off-label patients. The reason is clearly related to the fact that you have, again, to ask for ethics commission authorization, etc., etc., etc. It's not practical. At least by our law, it is not very practical. With time, probably this has to be changed also. And there was no difference in efficacy and safety. What is our global experience on biosimilar? Updated here by April 2018. So just to remind you here, the approval of CTP13 was September 2013, Benepali, the etanercept biosimilar, January 2016, Truxima, the rituximab biosimilar, approved May 2017. So we have 404 patients exposed to biosimilars in the database, in RUMAPT. Of these, 87% are still on the drug. After the date of approval, more than 68% of the first treatment with infliximab were with the biosimilar. Okay? So most of the new treatments at a national level were with the biosimilar. And for instance, for etanercept, a part of them were with Benepali. This is linked with two things. One is the date of approval. The other, this has been already referred here. We're speaking about a subcutaneous drug that, although it's full reimbursed by the state, it is available on the at the level of the pharmacy. So it's a prescription that goes directly from the doctor to the pharmacy. It's the hospital pharmacy, okay? But it is not passing through the filter of the national service. Okay? On the contrary to our practice here at the hospital, where we have this meeting that I've told you that we have here every week in this room, where we decide what we do. A private doctor, for instance, here can decide by himself. I don't agree with this, but that's how it is. Okay? So that's the reason why there is this difference. Okay? After the date of approval, the uptake of rituximab has been quite different from Benepali, as you can see. So 1 year of difference, more than 1 year of difference, and you see that the percentage of the first treatments with rituximab, almost 50% were with the biosimilar, because this is hospital-based. And so as we saw with the experience with UCL, and also what Philippe told us, when you use this kind of biosimilars that in fact are already absorbed or already uptaken by our minds in the context of previous experience with other biosimilars, yeah? And at the same time, with the centralization of the decision, the uptake is much faster. This is well known. Of interest also is that 42% of the new treatment in spondyloarthritis patients were with the biosimilar, 34% of RA patients with a biosimilar, and 60% of psoriatic arthritis patients with a biosimilar. Why is this? This is related, for those that are not rheumatologists, this is related with new treatments that are available for rheumatoid arthritis and for spondyloarthritis, particularly for psoriatic arthritis, where treatments such as secukinumab, ustekinumab, have been introduced recently in daily life. Of course, we use them for years, but they have been more introduced recently, and a little bit, I would say, as a reflection to the presence of biosimilars also. And the same holds true for rheumatoid arthritis, where tocilizumab, rituximab have been more used in recent years, as we saw in the curves. So I would like just to show you exactly what I've shown to you, just looking at big numbers with our experience with the old patients, now looking at individual patients. So this is a picture captured from one of the screens of RUMAPT, and we are looking at a patient, okay, a patient that is being followed up from 2015 up to here is 2016. So what we see here is one of the activity measurements that we use for spondyloarthritis, okay? So this is ASDAS and BASDAI, for those that are not rheumatologists. This captures disease activity in spondyloarthritis patients, such as patients with ankylosing spondylitis. And you see that, in fact, there is fluctuation. That's what we always saw in these patients. This is the typical thing that historically we have seen in all rheumatic patients, as I told you, okay? The same holds true for today. So we see this kind of fluctuations. We can't get rid of this, okay? In this case is a rheumatoid arthritis patient. So the arrow represents the introduction of the biosimer, okay? The other patient is a rheumatoid arthritis patient, and you see here captured more time. This is 2010, 2016. Here in 2015, the biosimilar was introduced. You see again some fluctuation. By coincidence, just telling you about a specific case. By coincidence, there is a decrease, an apparent decrease in disease activity, but this is of course because his disease was going a little bit down. Okay, so that's how we have to deal with this kind of patients. We see again the same patient, so the date is 2015. This is the joint count. This is a little bit also to illustrate how we work with this. Okay, so this is just we just pick this with the mouse pad and just tick the joints. Okay, and it automatically calculates our scores, the scores that we need. Okay, such as the DAS score. And you see here. So you see here. This is 2015. 2015 is this moment, and now in 2015, at the end of 2015, you see the same patient but with less joints. So this is exactly the reflection of what is going to happen in the screens. Okay, so this is a big help in terms of daily activity. Also because we can export. This is imprimir means print. And when we press this button, this gives us a report that can go to the GP, to a colleague, or we copy and paste in the electronic clinical record of the place where we were working. And the nice part of this is that automatic report created in half a second has the name, the age, when the disease started, the drugs that the patient had in the past, etc. It reports everything about the patient. So it's highly impressive because it seems that you have been working for hours producing that report. Okay, so it's funny that here at our hospital, when people look at the reports from the rheumatologists, they are highly impressed by the details that we have because it is automatic exportation from this too. Okay, so RheumoPT and our own data show positive experience on the use of CTP13, and I would like to share with you, without interrupting the presentation, the follow-up of this. Okay, which is. How has this reflected in terms of pharmacoeconomy? So Felipe Araújo, when he presents the data from rituximab, he has alluded a little bit to it, because we have discussed this before. Let me just put you in perspective. So at European level, there were 54 marketing authorization of biosimilars made in the past, and they were reviewed with 2 negative opinions, 10 withdrawal prior to opinion, and 42 positive opinion. This has been shown before, so that's the line of the biosimilars that we have, and the biosimilars that are now available, and we've discussed this. But the landscape is changing quickly because this is like a wave, yeah? Because we see this in preclinical, then phase 1, phase 3, and then everybody is going to arrive very soon. And just to impress you a little bit with EMA numbers, these are the list of EMA approved biosimilars, which is impressive. Okay, the ERR includes some small molecules such as erythropoietin, etc. Okay, but so a huge experience accumulated by EMA. Okay, and exactly a paper that we wrote recently, and I've picked exactly the conclusion of that paper. So this was an analysis of all the pharmacoeconomical analysis regarding the use and introduction of biosimilars. And after making many tables, etc., 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 I think that what we can collect from that is this paragraph. So it is a fact that everybody is waiting. We heard our colleague from UCL, from London, that everybody in UK was eager to have biosimilars available because of economical aspects. Okay, I think that in some countries like UK, like Denmark, like Norway, the term, the word eager is much appropriated. I think that you, like me, are wanting to see things happening and try to understand what is happening. But in those countries, they decided that we go for the price and that's all. Okay. So this was viewed by many countries as a big opportunity to mitigate this economic burden of biotech drugs. And in fact, the budget impact analysis on biosimilar demands has predicted in many countries the decrease in costs, and it is a fact. This has been already reported specifically in several countries, and this constitutes a direct cost saving. This is a part of the story. The other part of the story, you are also aware, is the indirect decrease of cost. Indirect because of competition between pharma. This has contributed a lot in our country to the decrease in price. Okay. The other part it can be seen, I hope, in the near future, because in many countries this has also been associated with an early start of the use of biologics. And the early start of the use of biologics in many clinical settings have transformed the outcome of patients. And we can go back and see how hematology also gained a little bit in the past with the biosimilar of filgrastim. Because the use of filgrastim was, you can confirm, the hematologists that have this perspective, has been transformed over the years. And more has been used, and this has released a little bit the way the strategy to treat some hematological conditions have evolved. And the same holds true, for instance, in the field of rheumatic diseases, where a little bit more freedom in the clinical decision was obtained in many countries due to the lowering of the prices. This can lead to unpreviewed and difficult to assess reduction in the global economical burden of disease. This will take time to understand. So this is what is picked here. This might translate into earlier therapy escalation, increased patient access in economical constrained countries, and improve long-term outcomes. This has to be proved yet, but we do believe that this is a fact. These benefits, however, will probably be asymmetrical between countries, depending on the national market size and characteristics. So I think that very organized countries that immediately decided to take advantage of this opportunity and were able to introduce infliximab biosimilar at a cost of almost 50% less or even lower, have gained a lot, of course. In other countries, it will be not so easy to have this. And also acquisition policies. For instance, I've told you about our national logic, which is to let hospitals lead the negotiation process. We are just 10 million, so if we would work as a 10 million community, negotiation with companies would be probably better than at the hospital level. Okay? Some countries have a national policy for negotiating with pharma companies. So these acquisition policies and competition with other biosimilars and originators, as well as patient and physician confidence on biosimilar therapies, are key to the success. And these other parts of the patient and physician confidence have two sides. One is the confidence that we are discussing here. is that we believe that in fact everything was taken care to produce very good products that are similar to the originators, so efficacy and safety is okay, but also that we are convinced that not only we are doing the best to our patients, which is treat them adequately, but also that we are saving money to everybody. Because sometimes we might think, is this the best option? Because sometimes what is happening also is that the prices decrease, the originator decrease, the biosimilar has still more or less the same price, and so the price difference is not as much as that. And so it is a matter of national negotiation and pressure to keep all the prices low and to guarantee that biosimilars are in fact cheaper than the originators. That we just have a kind of an agreement between all manufacturers to have a price more or less the same, and then they share the opportunity of selling the drugs. So it is very important that in fact there is a market, an active market, that there is competition and not a kind of an agreement of prices where the state or the hospital or the person has to pay what the companies decide that we pay. So that this is a regulation that has to be left over the states, of course. So there are many economical studies using several models, but the provision is that the biosimilar cost saving in Europe will likely range from 2.2 to, it's very different at the range, to 433 million. So whatever the range, the point is there is a prediction of a huge save, and that is the motivation for the use of these drugs. So this is the slide that I've showed to you before. So when we started to switch patients in our program, this is the number of vials in blue of the biosimilar, of the CT-P13 biosimilar. So you see growing and the decrease in the vials of Remicade, and at the same time we saw indeed the decrease in the cost over the year program that we had all over the year, a steady decrease. And this means a 26% reduction in price. So it was just a part of the patients, but this combined with the introduction of the etanercept biosimilar, the rituximab biosimilar, and also with clinical trials, because in institutions like ours it also decreased the price, we were able to decrease for the first time in 20 years the cost with this type of treatment. And we decrease it in terms of big numbers, because we provide support to many patients. The global decrease in numbers was quite impressive. For us, at least, it was 200,000 euros less in this year than the previous year. Of course, it's not just this. Okay, it's this plus the other biosimilars and other strategies that we've used. For instance, one thing that can provide an extra saving is when you have many patients being treated. If you treat them at the same time and you have centralized preparation of the vials together with gastroenterology and dermatology, etc., you save a lot of money on that also. Okay, so every strategy was here contributing to the reduction in costs. And so, no doubt that biosimilars contribute for a global reduction in the cost of biologics. That's no doubt. The question now is a little bit to understand if we are getting that gain in the pocket of individual patients. That is for sure true in settings where people are paying or co-paying the treatment. Okay, it depends on the country. In countries like us, where these kind of drugs are 100% reimbursed, the question is a little bit different. Is when we are making these efforts and we are negotiating a little bit with patients in order to save money, we then argue with each other, at least not with patients, but between each other, what are we doing as a community to this money? Is this money going to be invested in other things that are not related with health? We don't know. In fact, it can be invested in submarines or airplanes or fighters. We don't know, in fact. On the other hand, if it is reinvested in health management Is this reinvested in the same field? We don't know. And if it stays inside the hospital, what is going to be the use of this money? Is this going to be invested in some facility related with the ER, for instance, where we have a huge pressure in this hospital with our emergency room, because this is also a trauma center where we receive more than 600 patients per day here. And it's always a place where we are discussing the investment. Or in fact, it will be possible, at least in some settings, to decide that a part of the money will be reinvested in the same field. For instance, we save 20% on that year. 10% will stay for the overhead of the hospital, okay? But 10% will stay at the department to invest in the department, to improve the conditions offered to the patients, to, for instance, offer touch screens for the patients to fill in room PT, to change the chairs in the waiting area, etc., etc., etc. So this would be a way, in my view, that would be attractive for the patients and for the physicians that are, in fact, a little bit a community. Eh? We are physicians and they are patients, but in fact we interact particularly in chronic conditions like is this the case for inflammatory bowel disease or rheumatic patients, where we engage with a long-term relationship with patients. And they are very interested, at least here, in the program that we've implemented. They know that the program was implemented and they are curious about it. How did it turn up? Everything is going well? Did we save money? And so these things in some clinical practice, I have to confess, are a little bit disappointing from the patient perspective. It sounds like that they have also participated in a process where they don't receive feedback. Okay, but again, this depends a lot on the practice that we have.